Hi, my name is Justin Grosslight and I'm an educator here in Ho Chi Minh City. I've been here for over 4 years and I've trained over 100 students privately and taught several dozen classes helping students prepare for the SAT and ACT tests and helping them go to college, as well as certain SAT subject tests and mathematics preparation. I currently work for IIV, a leading consultancy in Ho Chi Minh City to help students prepare to go to college. I hold 2 bachelor's degrees from Stanford, one in history and one in mathematics, and a master's degree from Harvard in history of science. A lot of preparation is needed, and the higher up you go on that list of the top 100, the more preparation it is and the harder work it is to get in. The 2 main components of getting into a top university are your grades, or your grade point average. That's either out of 10 if you're at a public school, or at an A, B, C, D, or 4-point system if you're at an international school, as well as your standardized test scores, which would be the SAT or the ACT. These require a lot of preparation, and top scores are needed, especially at the top 15 or 20 universities. In the top 100, very high scores are still needed across the board. I'd like to also emphasize the fact that while grades and test scores form a tremendously large percentage of your application process, they're only a piece of the puzzle, and that the intangible and subjective pieces are also important. In addition to your grades and your test scores, you're going to need recommendations from teachers. Those can be probably translated if your teacher only knows Vietnamese, but you're also going to have to write essays to get into schools. When you apply, there's a common application which you'll have to write an essay for, and each individual school, especially in the top group, will have probably one or many essays that you will have to write specific to that school. That's your chance to articulate what your interests and passions are and what motivates you in a way that simple numbers and grades cannot. And it's a very important part of the process because it gets to show your interests, passions, and values. Often students and their families ask me, is it possible to still go to a top university if you went to high school in Vietnam? And I think it's totally and entirely possible to do, and I've seen my students do it quite regularly. I think you just have to be aware that the preparation is intense and requires a lot of commitment, not only on behalf of students, but on behalf of their families. In Vietnam, I've had the honor of working with students who have gone both through the public school system as well as the international school system. Public school students and international students differ in certain ways. The students out of public schools tend to have a very rigorous training in mathematics and science, but yet often their English needs a little bit more work. They're definitely committed and focused to working hard. International school students tend to be more fluent in speaking English, and they have access to AP and IB programs that are important to helping you get in universities, but often they need more work with the critical thinking involved in succeeding on standardized tests. I would personally suggest that before you begin work on an SAT or an ACT, you already have, if you need it, a TOEFL score underway. That means a TOEFL probably well into the 90s before you embark on your SAT or ACT mission. Preparation for SAT or ACT is generally, I would say, a year's worth of work for a Vietnamese student, if not more. And there are various companies in Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi that offer services. Some of them are on the mass market end. They offer course after course open to the public. Some of them are more consultancy firms that offer more seminar and one-on-one based tutoring. Who you pick should be a matter of preference to you, but do beware of people that make promises for guarantees or say that they'll charge an exorbitant amount of money on a promise that you'll get a certain score or a certain admission offer. Those companies should be avoided at all costs. Often, a lot of students in Vietnam like to prepare for their SAT or ACT by doing repeated tests over and over again. That's successful in the beginning because it kind of habitualizes one to learning how to pace themselves through a test and understand the mindset of the test taker. I think that's good. But it doesn't ultimately always build the critical thinking skills necessary for being successful on an SAT or ACT. So when I teach my students, I do make them go through many tests, but I also emphasize over and over again the importance of critical thinking skills, both verbal and mathematical. I recommend that even before you start preparing for your SAT, you begin developing a good vocabulary, and that comes from reading the right things. That doesn't come from reading mass culture books like Harry Potter or The Hunger Games. I indeed like those things, but I don't think that they help build a vocabulary. It comes from reading things that are written by professors or intellectuals for intellectuals, not scholars, but intellectuals. Those are things like the New York Times newspaper, things like the New Yorker magazine, or things like the Atlantic Monthly magazine, all of which are accessible online for less than $1 a week, and the Atlantic is free. If you read that and you keep an active notebook of your vocabulary words, you will grow. I also have written a vocabulary book myself, Vocabulary Quest, which has statistically gone through SAT and ACT tests and called out the most common and important words on the SAT, and this is a book I would strongly suggest that you work through. This can be done independently of classes and on your own. However, using the words and seeing them in context beyond the book is helpful. It depends on the student. It's important to get a test of where you start to see the route you want to go. Often I have students come to me after they do a class or two and want one-on-one preparation, or they come and take one of my classes and transition to one-on-one preparation. Or they get together with a small group of friends and we do a 2-on-1 or 3-on-1 or 4-on-1, which are smaller than classes. Also, beware of classes that are bigger than, say, 15, 16 students. You need to make sure that you get the attention you need from a teacher, and an ideal class size should probably be an 8 to 10 range for what you want. As I mentioned before, the college application process is not just about grades and test scores. Your essays are super important for the application process, and there also are consultancy firms in both Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi that offer to help you with your essays, IIV being one of many. I strongly believe that that part of the relationship, if you're going to get essay advice, needs to be based on comfortability and trust. And that it's really important to feel like you can trust the people you work with in getting your essay preparation help done. And it's a piece that is fundamental to getting in a good school, because test scores alone and grades are not good enough. So don't think that because you have strong grades and test scores, your package is complete. Often people want to know how much it costs to prep to go to school in the United States, and I want to give you some basic figures about that. If you take mass market courses in Ho Chi Minh or Hanoi for SAT alone, that doesn't mean subject tests or TOEFL, you could be looking at a number of roughly 50 million Vietnam dong. If you're working with a consultancy or boutique firm with trained teachers that have had years of experience and Ivy League degrees, then you could be spending 70 to 100 million probably on test preparation alone. Often I have students that come to me and want to do one-on-one work or small group work after doing courses, either courses with me or courses elsewhere around Vietnam, and I'm happy to do that. I should just be aware that one-on-one rates begin generally around $50 an hour and go well over $100 an hour depending on your choice of tutor. Small group rates will be cheaper per person and more expensive overall as a package, but for each student it will be cheaper. That doesn't include the money you might spend preparing for subject tests or for TOEFL or general tutoring or essay consulting and guidance. If you look at the whole package for everything, test prep, essay prep, everything you need, if you really want the whole package guided through you, you could be looking at a figure that's well over $25,000 just to prepare. My answer is that it's not cheap. Tuition at a top American university, private university, can run $40,000 plus room and board, plus books, plus incidentals. That's probably about another $20,000. So you're looking at least $60,000 a year times 4 years, plus flights back to Vietnam that could exceed $250,000. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying this to prepare you for what you could experience in the years ahead. People often ask, are there scholarships for Vietnamese students? And the answer is yes. That's a very long discussion, and I don't want you to embark on that now. But I can say very briefly that if you're applying to a top public university in America, there generally is not scholarship money available for Vietnamese students. Vietnamese students applying to top national universities, most of which are private, as well as small private liberal arts colleges, have a better chance in receiving some form of financial aid if there is a need for it.